So we have this for reference, and then share this slideshow. There we go. Okay, so quick and dirty guide to lit reviews. So I think I mentioned it in the video. I might not have. I might have cut that part out where I actually talk about it. But lit reviews, literature reviews or lit reviews. If you hear me reference a lit review, this is what I'm talking about. But literature reviews are a genre of research that presents, well, I guess I can show you the first slide. A genre of research that presents a survey of scholarly sources on a specific topic. And what I mean when I say survey is not the same kind of survey that you're carrying out by asking questions. I mean a broad overview of the current knowledge in a particular scholarly field or in a particular field. The goal of the lit review is to identify relevant theories, methods, gaps in the research. We've talked about this as being the thing that guides you to your research question, right? The gap in the current field of knowledge is where you position yourself. It's where you come at your research topic from. The literature review, as you work through it, will help you refine that question and get more and more specific with it. I think I have another slide in here somewhere about it, but lit reviews come in two forms. You can do a standalone literature review. You see these often. I don't want to say they're an easy publication for scholars to do, but they're kind of a fallback because you can just go out and summarize the literature in a field. So you see them as standalone pieces occasionally, fairly frequently. But you also get them as part of larger articles, larger projects, because someone is identifying the literature that got them to where they are at with the question. And they're using that lit review to make a case that this research is important, that this gap exists in the current body of knowledge. And for our purposes, we're going to be doing more of that latter one, where we summarize what's out there and argue that this research that we're doing is important because here is this gap in the literature. So how do you do it? Obviously, first step in doing any kind of research is just to search for the relevant literature. You go out, you search library databases. I gave you a brief overview on that. You go out and you look at Google Scholar to see the kind of citation trails that people have left behind. Once you have a good stack of research in front of you, or if you do it, or you can do this while you're doing the research, right? Find a source, decide if it's relevant. Well, then you evaluate it, right? So this means getting rid of things that are not relevant, but also going through and seeing how these different pieces fit together. It's almost like doing a puzzle, right? How does this work impact this other work? Or where do we see these themes, debates? How do these things talk to each other? What do each of these leave out? Where's the space in between these sources? So it's really about figuring out the broad scope of the field of knowledge and the way that it's represented in single pieces. So I want to stress here that you are not reading for a lot of small details in these articles that you find, though, that can be important. You are reading for what they represent to the broader field of knowledge. So again, you'll see this in a minute. I have a slide on it, but read the abstract, skim the article. Don't feel like you have to go deep in depth on any of these. There are multiple levels of reading, and the type of reading that you do for most of the sources in a literature review is not the same type of reading that you do when you're researching, say, an argumentative article or an argumentative essay, like maybe what you wrote in 105. Those ask you to engage critically with the text. At the micro level, a literature review asks you to engage with the field at a macro level with the individual articles and books offering, kind of data points to where the field is. The summary heuristic is a good tool to use here because it is summarizing. And if you go through and you find a couple of quotes that speak to the overall purpose of the article, then you'll be well equipped to do this literature review as well as what comes down the road when we delve into these sources in a more traditional manner, more traditional for you, right? Like 105. Once you have identified the themes, the debates, the gaps, all the stuff you want to talk about, then you will outline the structure of your lit review. There are two major formats for a lit review. One is thematic. We outline the literature review, we organize it according to the themes that we find. So this would mean, let's see, what have I been working on? For me, I recently did a piece on game-based learning strategies or game-based learning pedagogies. So the different themes that I identified were like student perceptions of game-based strategies, impacts on learning outcomes, just the types of different strategies that are out there, right? And I organized my lit review according to those major themes. Okay, that's one way. The other way is chronologically. We start out from a theoretical starting point, right? Where do you identify this topic first gaining steam at? Where does this start appearing in the literature? And then we go thematically to show how the field of knowledge has evolved. And I say field of knowledge kind of, what's that? I say field of knowledge kind of hesitantly, I guess, because what we're really doing is we're focusing down on a field of knowledge about a very particular topic. You don't want your lit review to go broad, right? When I'm writing an article on game-based pedagogies, I'm not going to write an article on pedagogy writ large, right? At all pedagogies, all of the different ways to teach writing, I'm going to look specifically at the ones that align with this minuscule topic that I'm writing on. Sometimes we get a mix of these. You might see people grouping things thematically and then chronologically, or chronologically according to themes. As a field of knowledge progresses, sometimes themes develop as kind of branches on the main trunk of that field of knowledge. So there is some leeway in this, but the two major ones are chronologically or thematic, or some mix of the two. And then finally, you write your literature review. I want to warn you, in the past, a lot of people have formatted this like it was an annotated bibliography, where they talk about one text for one paragraph, they talk about the next text for another paragraph, they talk about the next one. And that's not really the job of a lit review. A lit review looks at the field itself, the kind of flow of knowledge within that field. So you're not really writing about individual sources. You're not trying to break them down and analyze them beyond just figuring out how they impact the overall field of knowledge, right? So when you write, sometimes what you'll see in lit reviews are things like, so-and-so says this in his article, ... And then we'll do the citation, and then we'll do something like CF, which means cross-reference, or C also, and do a couple more citations. And that is okay, that is good. It shows that you're familiar with the work, but you don't need to go into a lot of detail about each article because they do similar things to that first article. Does that make sense? Questions so far?
Will you be putting up examples of lit reviews so we can kind of see what we're supposed to be doing and what we're not supposed to be doing? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. What else?
So you'll put up like a template for us to look at so we know what we're doing like better.
Yeah, I will. I'll throw up a couple of examples.
Thanks.
It's always good when the standing desk just kind of collapses a notch. You know, whatever. So how do you go about actually finding your sources? So the first thing you'll want to do is identify keywords within that particular topic that you're looking for. So let's say I was looking at filter bubbles and I wanted to talk about them, then obviously a filter bubble would be a keyword that I could search for. I could also do things like personalization, social media, words, partisanship, that whole red feed, blue feed kind of idea. So you just really need to refine a list of keywords. This is also where the summary heuristic will come in handy, because if you have been following along, I told you a couple of weeks ago to go out and find something that you could use for your research topic. And if you did that and you did the summary heuristic, then you have some keyword, you've identified some kind of keywords that you could use and dip into as a means of going to find other sources. And like I said before, how do you do that? You get on the library website, you get on Google Scholar, and you look and you see what pops up. You read the abstract to see if it's related to what you want. You read the title to see if it's related, because frequently you can rule things out just based on the title. Or you go to Google Scholar and do the same thing, but you can also look at citation webs to see what cited what. So if I was looking at filter bubbles, I might go to Google Scholar, type in filter bubbles, and then the top results, as I've shown you before, would probably be Eli Pariser's filter bubbles. The filter bubble, I think is what it's called. His original book from 2009-ish, 2012 maybe. Google Scholar lets me check to see what that's been cited in, and from there I can go on to discovering other stuff and chasing this thread through all of these different sources. I want to stress again that you don't have to read the whole article for this. It's okay to read the abstract and to skim the rest. I know that probably flies in the face of some of the things you've been told about how to do research, but there are different types of reading and there are different types of research. So don't be afraid of skimming things that you have no intention of delving deeply into. Okay. I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's kind of part and parcel with that summary heuristic I gave you. It just goes a little bit deeper into the weeds. But this is a list of questions you can ask yourself about each article that you find. Some of them answerable quickly, some of them not. So things like what question or problem is the author addressing? You could probably answer based on the abstract and the title, as well as the key concepts. But things like key theories, models, and methods, you would definitely have to dive further into. If it is a qualitative or quantitative research article, then the authors will probably place information about their methodology in the abstract, so that might be easy enough to find, as well as the results. But finding out how it relates to other literature in the field, or finding out how it contributes to your topic, are going to require more digging and more critical thinking. So just be aware of this. Literature reviews frequently zoom in on particular sources. So they will be painting a broad picture of the field of knowledge and zoom in on a source or two that are particularly important to the field before zooming back out. So as you're going through, maybe notice which sources seem more important to what you're doing, and be prepared to zoom in further on those. That would mean things like using quotes, identifying key theories and models, identifying how it impacts the field after it was published. This slideshow is going to be available through Blackboard. It's already available in the slideshow folder on Google Drive. Just click the link under, I believe, content. It says slideshows, and you'll be able to pull this up for yourself. So if you need to return to this list of questions, you can. I don't want to assume this goes without saying, but always, always, always cite your sources and cite them when you first find them. Okay, keep a record, start a Word document, start a Google Doc. I use Zotero. It's a free bibliography service. And I just write down citations for everything that I read, everything that I encounter. If you think you might include it in your lit review, write it down. This is not the type of essay that's going to have 2 or 3 sources. By the end of this, you might end up with 10 to 15 sources, not because you dive deep into each of them, but just because you reference them, and then because they show some relation to the field. Like I said earlier, don't be afraid to do a main citation and then offer this comparative. So-and-so says X and drop a quote, cite that, and then also leave a note that says, see also X, Y, Z. Right? This other person, this other person, this other person, those X, Y, and Z would also be would also be cited in your references. Okay, so write down, keep notes, keep track of what you are using, keep track of what you're reading.
Good question.
Yeah, shoot.
What format would you want those sources in?
That's a good question. I'm okay with APA or MLA. Either one's fine with me.
Thank you.
So as you're writing this, as you're looking for those themes, debates, and gaps, you can ask yourself whether certain approaches become more or less popular over time. Do you see people asking the question the same way, doing the same methodology again and again with this topic, or does it change? What questions or concepts do you see coming up again and again and again over the course of all of your scanning the literature? Debates, conflicts, contradictions. Is there much disagreement in the field? Is there some kind of scholarly consensus? Are they all moving together? Are people going one way? Are some people going one way while other people are going another? What are the big publications in this field? Like I said, filter bubble, obviously I'm going to cite Eli Paris there because that is the first time the idea gets into the mainstream, which changes the direction of that field. And then what's missing as you're reading through these abstracts, as you're reading through the abstracts, what do you notice that's missing? What are they not asking? What are they not telling? And if there is something that you think might be missing from the abstract, that might be a sign to delve deeper into the article itself. And if it doesn't mention the thing that you're looking for, if it doesn't answer the question you have in the abstract, that might be a good weakness to note. That might be a good gap to note, because it might be a place that your own research might fit in, and that will further help you set the context and refine your research question. I talked about this already, but what's the structure that you're going for? Are you going chronologically? We're going thematically. I'm not going to make you worry about methodologically or theoretically. There are these 2 other approaches to doing lit reviews, but for most of you, the 2 most important ones are going to be chronologically or thematically, or some combination thereof. Methodologically means that you're sorting it according to the methodology they use to research the topic. Theoretical means you're focused especially on frameworks or theories and different approaches to understanding whatever it is you're trying to understand. So yeah, those 2 exist. Don't worry about them. Focus on chronological or thematic organization. And as I said before, these lit reviews typically take two forms. One is the standalone lit review, which might make implications for future research, saying we found this gap in the literature, someone should probably do something about this, without taking steps to actually address that gap. If it's part of a larger project, then the lit review will identify the gaps in the literature and show the impact that literature has on the research that you've done, the question that you're asking, and the project that you have set up. It'll also point out the gap in the research and say, I'm going to do something about this, and then proceed to give us the answer to that. What do you do about it to try to improve the field of knowledge? I think that might be the last slide. Okay, so yeah, that's the last slide. So I am going to stop sharing for a moment. That was a lot of info. And I'm going to ask you now, with that spiel done, what questions you have about what you are doing.
So when we write down our lit review and we have, these 10 to 15 sources, realistically, how long do you expect it to be? Because I know you said like don't go into specific like in-depth detail of every single reading, but like kind of plot out what the timeline is of the knowledge. So like, do you expect it to be like what, 2 to 3 pages at most, or?
Yeah, so I think the lit review has a suggested word count of 500 words, so it won't be very long at all.
Okay, thanks.
And you can go over that a bit, and I think most people will have that problem, having to go over instead of being under the word count. So yeah, suggested word count, we're in that ballpark.
Hey, perfect, thanks.
What else?
So is this something that's okay? Is this something that's related to our project? Like, are we supposed to be doing the articles that are related to our project, or are we just doing something that's relevant, like in the media?
The project. This is part of that semester-long research project, or semester-long research topic, sorry. So, yeah. What else?
What was that resource you said you used for Works Cited?
I use Zotero. And I was actually pulling it up so I could show you what it looks like in just a minute, but it takes a while because I've got such a huge library. What else? So I'm going to show you a couple of things here. Show you Zotero. So this is Zotero once I open it up. Most of these things I actually, Zotero has a Chrome extension. I use Chrome at the moment for lack of a better option. And Zotero actually lets me just click on that button on the Chrome extension and it captures the information for me. And if possible, that's not one. This, no, this. Let me find one that actually has it. Yeah, if it's possible, it snags the PDF text for me. Right. And then if I want to, wrong place. If I wanted to, I could just select a couple of things here. And then with a right click, it lets me create a bibliography. Right. So it stores them, it houses them, it gets me a place to stash all of the PDFs, but it also will automatically create my bibliography for me. So just to zoom in, there we go. This is a list of sources that I was using to kind of fill in as a literature review. Sorry, this is a list of sources I used in a literature review that fed into a larger project I did about game-based learning. That's one I mentioned. right? This is far more sources than I expect you to have, because it's a lot. I think there's like 100 some odd here. But the same thing is true. Once I'm done, I can just select the ones I want, export a bibliography, and it creates it for me. Okay, so that's what my article dumping ground looks like. And then from there, I have to give myself access to my own Google Doc. One sec. This is what I was working on before before COVID kind of interrupted everything. There we go. Can y'all see that? Because I could not. Okay. So I can post this if you like. It's not a great article. I'm not particularly proud of it because it was in a first draft and I never finished it before COVID shut everything down. But I start off with some kind of justification for this thing I'm doing, right? A note on why this is necessary, a reference to James G. Hey, look at that. One clear through line through much of the literature throughout GBL, game-based learning's history, is a focus on games' potential to drive student motivation. So here I'm transitioning into a lit review. And then I go through and I kind of summarize, like, here's a good one. Motivation seems to be one driving factor in the rise of GBL. And then with that statement, I reference everything that I have found that talks about motivation in game-based learning, right? So there's two main sources, Dieterding 2012 and 2013. And then I do a cross-reference, so cross-reference CF, Dieterding, Sickart, Knack, O'Hara, and Dixon 2011, Moranake, Tondello, Arnedo Moreno in 2018, Van Eck 2006. Those are all alphabetical, in case you're wondering how to do that. Not by year. And in the very next sentence, I give a specific quote from One Piece, right? To offer a deeper dive into what I'm talking about. Okay. So this might be kind of what yours looks like, right? Where you just offer a brief summary and then move on. Right. So here's another thing I'm going to talk about. Education technology market. Oh, let's talk about some sources with education technology. Here's a whole host of sources that talk about that in this particular one, this particular issue. The application of pre-existing technological platforms designed specifically for this purpose, referenced in these, as well as this other specific source that talks about the application thereof, right? So each paragraph in my article here focuses on one issue, one theme in research on game-based learning. Will yours be as long as this? Probably not, because it's only 500 words. Mine is much longer, but this should offer you an idea of what we're looking for. And I can post at least the lit review portion of this, because at least that part I feel like is not a complete word vomit. Let's see, it goes on. Mine is, what is this, 5 pages? And even that felt short to me. Okay, so questions, now that I've shown you some of this. What do you think? Are you daunted? You feel like you can do this? If not, what do you need to know in order to be able to do this? And know in advance that some of this is also just getting your hands dirty and getting into it and actually doing it. That will help you understand it. So questions that you have, concerns, comments, where are you at?
So you're not actually quoting anyone from the you're not actually quoting anyone from the readings. You're just kind of like referencing them. So you wouldn't actually like pull quotations or anything.
It depends on how important. So for this one, right, it depends on how important I think the thing that they're saying is. Like if there's something that they say particularly well, I might pull that quote. But if it's just like, oh, these things talk about this, then no, you wouldn't directly quote them. Like right here, you have that example, right, where I actually pull the quote because I think saying that educators care about students' experiences and learning is going to be important to what I'm writing overall, so I directly quote it. Right, but above that, I don't, because citing 6 different sources that say essentially the same thing doesn't feel as important. What else? Okay, I'm going to pause the recording